This is a production of South Dakota Public Broadcasting. State House program funding provided by the South Dakota Bar Foundation, the educational and charitable arm of South Dakota lawyers and judges.
Joint session will come to order. The prayer today will be offered by Bishop David Zelmer from the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, after which please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Lord of all, you have declared what is right, to seek justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with you. On this day, we remember Supreme Court Justice Steve Zinner. We give thanks for his love of family, his balanced upholding of the law and its administration, and his dedicated service to the people of South Dakota. May our memory of his life be a guide to all those set aside to serve. We ask your continued blessing upon Chief Justice Gilbertson, our Supreme Court justices, our judges and magistrates in this state. Guard them from retribution and from corruption. Give them the spirit of wisdom, that they may perceive the truth and administer the law impartially. We pray as well for Governor Noem, our representatives and senators, all those elected and appointed to serve the people of South Dakota. Bless them with wisdom and courage, that they might faithfully serve all those in this state. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary of the Senate will call the roll.
Senator Blair, Bolin, Kamak, Cronin, Kurd, DeSanto, Ewing, Foster, Greenfield, Heinert, Jensen, Kennedy, Klum, Colbeck, Langer, Maher, Monroe, Nelson, Neseba, Norstrup, Otten, Partridge, Rush, Russell, Schoenbeck, Smith, Soholt, Solano, Stalzer, Steinhauer, Sutton, White, Wick, Wismer, and Youngberg. We have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll of the House.
Anderson, Bartels, Barthel, Beal, Bordeaux, Borglum, Bruner, Chafee, Chase, Schwach, Dennert, Deitch, Diedrich, Duba, Duval, Fink, Freimuller, Glanzer, Goodwin, Gosh, Lana, Greenfield, Lana, Gross, Hammock, Hanson, Healy, Howard, Hunhoff, Jensen, Kevin, Johns, Johnson, Chris, Johnson, David, Carr, Koth, Lake, Latterell, Lesmeister, Livermont, Marty, McClary, Mills, Milstead, Miss Kimmons, Mullally, Olson, Otten, Herman, Perry, Peterson, Kent, Peterson, Sioux, Pischke, Post, Poirier, Quam, Randolph, Rasmussen, Reed, Reimer, Ring, Rounds, Saba, Shanefish, Smith, Jamie, St. John, Steele, Sullivan, Weiss, Wheezy, Willardson, York, Zickman, Speaker Haugard. Mr. President, there is a quorum present.
Thank you.
Senator Langer moves that a committee of 3 on the part of the Senate and a committee of 4 on the part of the House be appointed to escort the Honorable David Gilbertson, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, to the rostrum.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. President announces the Senators, Senator Lang, Bolin, Heinert, House members Representative Qualm, Beal, Smith, and McCleary. Ladies and gentlemen, it is today my honor to introduce Chief Justice Dave Gilbertson. Dave Gilbertson was appointed to the South Dakota Supreme Court in April of 1995. He was elected to a 4-year term as Chief Justice by the Supreme Court in September of 2001 and has been re-elected to serve as Chief Justice for 5 consecutive terms, with the most recent 4-year term in 2017. Chief Justice Gilbertson received his undergraduate degree from South Dakota State University in 1972 and his Juris Doctor from the University of South Dakota School of Law in 1975. Prior to serving as the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court, he engaged in private practice and was appointed to the Circuit Court bench to serve the 5th Judicial Circuit from 1986 to his appointment to the Supreme Court in 1995. And on a more personal note, it was my privilege to get to know Chief Justice Dave Gilbertson back in 2001 when he was first appointed. And I sat in the back of the chamber, and his dad, the first year he was appointed, sat back there, and every year thereafter until his death, I'd have a conversation. Part of the greatest job and greatest part of being in the legislature are the relationships and the friends you make. And I certainly count Chief David Gilbertson among them. I developed a keen respect for his abilities and the things that he has offered to the state, along with all of the Supreme Court justices, including Justice Zinter, who is also a good friend. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce Dave Gilbertson. Would the Sergeant at Arms announce the arrival of Chief Justice David Gilbertson?
Thank you. Members of the House and members of the Senate, folks in the gallery, listening public, please welcome Chief Justice David Gilbertson.
Thank you for that warm introduction. It's always a pleasure to appear at the State of the Judiciary message. Governor Noem, Lieutenant Governor Roden, Speaker Hoggard, members of the legislature, constitutional officers, my fellow justices, judges, unified judicial system employees, and all citizens of the state of South Dakota. The writer of the ancient book of Ecclesiastes declares, to everything there is a season. 2019 opens with significant changes in state government. We have a new governor, lieutenant governor, and cabinet. We have many new legislators and important changes in legislative leadership. New constitutional officers have taken office. In the past 4 years, the court system has welcomed 3 new justices to the Supreme Court. A 4th will arrive shortly. We have also welcomed 21 new circuit judges out of a total of 43, and 13 new magistrate judges out of a total of 16. We do not ignore the past, however, and start totally anew. As Pulitzer Prize-winning author and presidential historian John Meacham noted, to fail to consult the past consigns us to what might be called the tyranny of the present. The mistaken idea that the crises of our time are unprecedented and that we have to solve them without experience to guide us. If we know, however, that those who came before us found the ways and the means to surmount the difficulties of their age, we stand a better chance of acting in the moment with perspective and measured judgment. Therefore, armed with the lessons of the past, we have a great opportunity to move forward with new vigor and new ideas to address old problems and come up with new solutions. This is the essence of democracy. At regular intervals, it reinvents itself. Change does not by itself, however, guarantee success. Those who now assume leadership roles still need to communicate with, challenge, and properly motivate our citizens. This is crucial for a judicial system because it has no army, no police force to enforce its decisions. It, in large part, relies on the public consent to the judicial system and its decisions. It could not function if it were relegated to the category of what is now called fake news. While such terms may be modern, the concept has existed over the ages. Over 2,000 years ago, a biblical prophet warned that the time will come when people will not listen to sound doctrine. Instead, they will follow their own desires and will collect more and more teachers who will tell them what they are itching to hear. The South Dakota Rural Attorney Program continues to be the gold standard for every state in the nation that lacks attorneys in rural areas. The problem exists in every state in the country. Even California and New York have rural counties that need attorneys. I am pleased to report that we currently have contracts with 24 rural counties in South Dakota to assist them in placing an attorney in their county. Since 48 counties are eligible for participation, that is half the eligible counties in the state. A recent expansion of the law allows the program to benefit municipalities with a population of 3,500 or less. We are in discussions with several municipalities. I am pleased to announce that the City of Elk Point is our first municipal contract. We hope to enroll at least 2 more municipalities in the near future. From time to time, I receive questions about the success of the program. The program has now been in existence for 5 years. That allows us the opportunity to review how it's doing. All trends are positive. Chief among them is that not one attorney who has gone into the program later left that rural practice due to a lack of available legal work. The need is there, and the need is being met. I have been asked how many attorneys have signed up for the program and later left for any reason. That happened at only one of our 24 counties and under very unique circumstances. And in that one case, we were able to replace that vacancy within a matter of months, and that county continues to enjoy the benefits of the program. It is clear that we are obtaining quality participants to go into the South Dakota Rural Attorney Program. Both for the attorney and the county become beneficiaries. This is taxpayer money that is being well invested and will pay long-term benefits for the participant counties and the state. It assists the infrastructure of these rural counties to vibrantly expand and grow, rather than to wither away and ultimately become uninhabited with only remnants of courthouses in what was once a thriving rural society. This year is also a milestone for the program in that the first attorney who signed up has now completed the 5 years he contracted for under the program. He's still there. With the program fast filling its capacity of 32, I am asking this legislature to slightly change the program to allow, when a person successfully completes his or her 5-year obligation, the UJS be authorized to replace that now empty slot with another young lawyer somewhere in a rural South Dakota location. Thus, it would become a revolving program, keeping its ceiling of 32 participants at any given time. This proposed change will not result in any increased cost to the general fund. When I first started to advocate for drug and alcohol courts back in 2007, I was called upon to justify why they were needed. Some saw drug and alcohol addiction as a minor irritant in society with larger problems to deal with. However, the UJS proceeded knowing that the need was substantial and growing. Today, one cannot pick up a newspaper or listen to the news without being overwhelmed by the effect drugs have on society. They are everywhere. In the last decade, South Dakota's population grew 8%. while drug offenses in South Dakota increased an alarming 222%. That hardly balances the scales of justice. This curse plays no favorite in selecting its victims. It strikes both sexes, all races, and people in rural and urban areas of South Dakota. A simple question to ask is, where are drugs not a problem? The simpler answer, sadly, is nowhere. Law enforcement officers who deal primarily in the area of illegal drug suppression say that in a perverse way, drug addicts are staunch advocates of the free enterprise system. Addicts believe in the law of supply and demand by buying whatever drug is available and whatever drug is the cheapest. Thus, what started out in 2007 with the drug court program to deal with the meth has now been forced by the evolving nature of addiction to address also prescription drugs, synthetic meth, heroin, and fentanyl-laced drugs. The list seems to expand by the month. Drugs do not respect age. Law enforcement officials, prosecutors, and judges report an increase in drug use by juveniles. The most problematic situation is where a juvenile uses meth or other drugs because the parents or adult figures in his or her home are addicted. It does not do a lot of good to be told in school about the evils of drug usage when one is confronted with it daily, at home, by parents. Between 2000 and 2018, enough Americans died in drug overdoses to wipe out every man, woman, and child in South Dakota. Were this state totally obliterated by one cataclysmic event, it would be front-page news worldwide. While the current drug crisis gets some attention, it falls well short of what it deserves, presumably because the deaths occur one at a time. With increasing drug usage, the court system is strongly feeling the stress of increased drug prosecutions, especially in the felony category. Based on this, I will be supporting an additional circuit judge request for Minnehaha and Lincoln counties that make up the 2nd Judicial Circuit. I only support a request for new judges when it is absolutely necessary. And at this point, I believe it is absolutely necessary. The rubber band is only going to stretch so far. Drug and alcohol courts continue to grow and are a vibrant force to save people from the curse of drug and alcohol addiction. Last year, these courts served 490 clients. 104 of these clients successfully completed the programs and graduated. Well, what happens to these graduates? 73% continue to be productive citizens who contribute to society by holding jobs, maintaining homes, and supporting their families. That is in stark comparison to those who fall back into addiction and are placed in the penitentiary. The cost of participation in these programs continues to be about 1/3 of the cost of sending a person to the penitentiary for a year. In addition, 1,266 children of program participants live with their family rather than becoming wards of the state of South Dakota at $10,000 per child per year. For many years, I've encouraged members of this legislature to attend a drug and alcohol court graduation to see firsthand the positive effect these programs have and to hear each graduate's life story. These stories are compelling. Many of you have done so and told me how impressed you were. A graphic, visual example of what is accomplished in these programs is to see a person entering the program on the first day when they are enrolled and compare that with the person you see on graduation day. The difference is startling. They were able to follow Winston Churchill's advice: when you are going through hell, keep going. It has been said there is no way to place a value on human life. However, I can do that in a limited way today. It's $8,065. That is the cost of keeping a person in our drug or alcohol programs for 1 year. As I previously noted, that's about 1/3 of the cost of keeping a person in the penitentiary for a year. It's probably cheaper than a funeral. which is where those with addictions are sadly ultimately headed unless the deadly downward spiral of addiction is broken. In 2015, the media alerted the public that people accused of crimes were being held in county jails longer than necessary while they waited for an evaluation to determine if they were competent to enter a plea to their criminal charge. For some unknown reason, the number of court-ordered competency evaluations jumped from 48 in FY 2013 to 147 just 2 years later. It tripled. As a result, a defendant was stuck in limbo in the county jail while waiting months for an evaluation. After reviewing extensive task force recommendations, this legislature passed comprehensive legislation in 2017 addressing the intersection of mental illness and the criminal justice system. The legislation broadened the definition of who could perform competency evaluations to reduce delay and provided a funding mechanism to assist counties with the costs of these evaluations. This legislation has achieved very positive results. The average time to complete a competency evaluation has been reduced from the 4 to 6 month range to now only 37 days. This is a win for those needing the evaluations. It's a win for law enforcement who interact with these individuals. It is a win for county jails who house them for now shorter lengths of time. And it is a win for taxpayers who funded the lengthy jail stays under the logjam of the old procedure. In the past, a person initially determined to be mentally incompetent to stand trial was sent to the Human Service Center at Yankton for treatment. If the treatment was successful and the person was deemed now competent to stand trial, the person often remained at HSC awaiting transfer back to the county where the crime is alleged to have occurred. This caused significant problems at HSC. It has a limited number of beds. A bed occupied by a now competent person waiting for transportation back to his or her county of origin is a bed that cannot be used for someone who needs mental health treatment. It costs the state $631 a day to house a prisoner for 1 day at HSC. In a cooperative effort between the governor's office, my office, and the state circuit court judges, this time delay has been slashed. It is a win-win for the defendant and the legal system and the taxpayer. Law enforcement provides initial responses to many of South Dakota's mental health crises. To help law enforcement address these crises safely and effectively, the Division of Criminal Investigation hired a crisis intervention training state coordinator last July. This coordinator trains officers in urban and rural areas and ensures that all South Dakota residents benefit from trained officers who can de-escalate a crisis. Officers also help residents contact appropriate mental health centers rather than just sending them to jail or transporting them to one of the few hospitals in the state, often hundreds of miles away, that serve people with significant mental health challenges. These few mental health hospitals should not be islands of treatment in a rural sea of misery because of unavailable treatment. We all agree that people who commit crimes need to be held accountable. On the other hand, we also know that jail is not always the best place for many people with serious mental illness. Nationally, 27% of jail inmates have serious mental health issues. In South Dakota, we had no way to determine the extent of this issue. However, House Bill 1183 designated a pilot project to do just that. The legislature requested 4 county jails to participate in the pilot program. This was so important, however, that 7 sheriffs, not just 4, stepped forward to collect the necessary data through a standardized screening tool designed for correctional populations. They found that between 14 and 27% of all those booked into their jails have indicators of serious mental illness and could benefit from obtaining a mental health assessment and treatment if appropriate. In 2017, no money was available to fund a pilot project for a mental health court in Pennington County. Creative minds came together, and the money was appropriated in 2018. Led by a specially trained judge, that program includes a team of mental health professionals to provide a treatment plan and services. The team works in coordination with a court service officer, a prosecutor, a defense attorney, a treatment provider, and a law enforcement representative to ensure adherence to the treatment and the supervision plan. The Pennington County Mental Health Court became a reality on July 1 of 2018. The goal, after extensive training, to be fully operational by this January 1st was successfully met. In Minnehaha County, the need for a mental health court is great. From February through June of 2018, 515 persons, or 13.5% of all prisoners screened at intake in that county jail, suffered from mental illness. It is time to seriously consider the creation of a mental health court in the Sioux Falls area. All of these improvements increase the efficiency of the judicial system of the state and render quicker and fairer justice to South Dakota citizens. Over the past 6 years, we have made great strides in how the criminal justice system functions, but we can still do better. Last year, I informed you that the Supreme Court was contemplating a thorough review of the South Dakota bar exam. We did so as part of our annual rules hearing in February. We received input from the bar, the public, and the bar examiners. The genesis of this review was a substantial decline in the bar passage rates during the past few years. This decline was certainly not unique to South Dakota. It exists on a nationwide basis. The causes for the decline are numerous, and most lie outside of the bar exam process itself. Nevertheless, the court found it appropriate to review South Dakota's testing standards. Our thorough review occurred over several months. The court concluded that the bar exam is being conducted in a fair manner to protect the public. That is the ultimate goal of a bar exam. We also knew that South Dakota needs sufficient attorneys who demonstrate professional competence and good moral character. We determined that it was appropriate to drop the minimum passing score on the multi-state portion of the exam from 135 to 133. We also now allow a carryover of up to 3 points from the essay portion of the exam to the multi-state. With changes pending across the board in legal education and law school admission standards, the court hopes these bar exam modifications will contribute to a greater passage rate while protecting the public's need for competent professional legal services. The court continues to be pleased with the dedicated work of the Board of Bar Examiners. The board administers and grades the bar exam and conducts hearings if an applicant's good moral character is subject to question. We not only strive for intelligent attorneys, we strive for honest ones. Last year, I visited with you about the problems facing the law school at the University of South Dakota, the state's only law school. To assist the law school, this legislature provided additional funds to improve its situation. Private individuals also stepped forward with generous contributions. This resulted in the funding of 15 scholarships for students who demonstrated exceptional scholastic achievement. We hope that these scholars will choose to spend their professional career in this state after they graduate. The plan appears to be working. Enrollment had been declining at the law school. It went from an average of around 70 students a year to just 52 in 2016 and 58 in 2017. Declining enrollment resulted in the loss of tuition to the school and inhibited the number of attorneys in South Dakota. This year, this unfortunate trend was reversed with an entering class of 72 students. An increase of 14 additional law students each year goes a long way to providing 14 additional attorneys for South Dakota each year. The improvement in the bar exam results for USD's School of Law graduates is nothing short of stunning. In July of 2016, only 59% of USD graduates who took the test for the first time passed the exam. The next year in 2017, it was even worse. Only 52% passed. However, this past July of 2018, first-time test takers from USD had a success rate of 82%, a 30% improvement in 1 year. These are important steps in improving the status of legal education and the legal system in South Dakota. When combined with our successful rural attorney program, they will provide competent legal services to every area of the state. The South Dakota Supreme Court's caseload is not static. It changes with the times. Recently, the court has seen significant growth in cases dealing with trusts. 20 years ago, our docket of trust litigation was minimal. To some, South Dakota is considered a flyover state. That erroneous perception, however, does not apply to the world of trusts. The significant expansion of trusts is due to the foresight of governors, beginning with Governor Janklow, and legislators that enacted laws attractive to moving trust assets into South Dakota. The combination of no personal state income tax, no corporate state income tax, no state inheritance tax, and no rule against perpetuities has produced stunning results. South Dakota now has 100 trust companies that maintain a physical presence in our state. According to the FDIC, $3.2 trillion, and that's trillion, folks, not billion, $3.2 trillion is invested in trusts in South Dakota. South Dakota is now the #1 state in the country in the amount of trust deposits. Every other state has less than we do. While many people may find a way to fly over South Dakota, somehow their dollars find a way to land here. With this significant growth, the Supreme Court anticipates its trust docket will continue to grow. In 2015, I became concerned about reports of financial, physical, and emotional elder abuse in South Dakota. I convened a task force chaired by Justice Stephen Zinner. The task force recommended broad protections for South Dakota's senior citizens. A comprehensive legislative proposal was enacted and went into effect in 2016. A key component of the law was the hiring of a full-time investigator and a full-time assistant attorney general to prosecute these crimes. Their exclusive task was to ferret out elder abuse. They have received 790 complaints and obtained 10 convictions. The number of complaints tells us that my original suspicion was correct, that there is significant elder abuse in South Dakota. South Dakota's comprehensive program works for South Dakotans and has become a model for the rest of the country. Very few states have a full-time, statewide investigative and prosecutive unit for elder abuse. The elder population is the fastest growing segment of South Dakota's population. We can take pride that South Dakota passed a law to protect seniors that actually has teeth and works. This is increasingly important because of the great number of seniors. Statistically, seniors possess the largest concentration of wealth in one age group that we have ever seen in the state and country. They earned it, and they should not be cheated out of it. As one longtime attorney quipped, we should not be probating estates of people who are still living. For the past several years, I've been reporting to you about the progress on the restoration of the Supreme Court's law library. The ongoing process generated much interest. To my knowledge, this was the last public area of the Capitol building that had not been restored to its original grandeur. Today, it's my pleasure to announce to you that the restoration project is completed. You can enter it and see the same decor that those who entered the building in 1911 saw for the first time. Yet it is a fully functioning law library with the latest computer legal research available. Our architect, Coke Hazard, was actually awarded the American Institute of Architecture South Dakota Design Award for 2018 for its design and renovation work on the project. My appreciation goes out to all who had a hand in this restoration. Most people are aware that the South Dakota Supreme Court has 5 permanent justices. However, South Dakota is a state where everybody seems to know everybody else. This, along with family relationships, can influence which justice sits on an individual appeal to the South Dakota Supreme Court. Judicial rules called canons provide guidance on when a permanent justice should be disqualified on an individual case. If a justice is related to a party to the appeal or the attorney involved in the appeal, that creates a conflict of interest. Moreover, a case might involve a close friend of a justice or a former business associate. If those situations exist, that justice will not sit on that individual case. Moreover, justices can become seriously ill or pass away. This leaves 4 remaining justices and creates a risk of a tie vote. In that instance, the Chief Justice authorizes a retired justice, a circuit court judge, or a retired circuit judge to act in place of the disqualified justice. Many of these retired jurists retain the mental and physical vigor of their years of full-time judicial service, but have simply passed the mandatory statutory retirement age of 70. I think we all know that a mentally competent person does not go to bed the night before their 70th birthday and wake up the next day senile. And I'm going to find out pretty quickly. The jurist selected to be the temporary judge has equal rights and responsibilities of the permanent justice for that individual case. In most cases, only 1 replacement is needed. In one case, however, all 5 permanent justices disqualified themselves, and 5 replacement justices were authorized to hear that one case. The system has been in place for decades and works very efficiently. On October 30th, the South Dakota Judiciary and the legal community were shocked by the sudden death of Justice Stephen Zinner. Justice Stephen Zinner was a dominant force on our court for 17 years. He was totally dedicated to his calling to serve the citizens of South Dakota as a justice. Whether you were of humble means or extremely wealthy, you would get the same fair, thorough treatment in his courtroom. Justice Zinner was a giant in the South Dakota legal community and the judiciary and possessed a positive personality, the likes of which I have never seen. We are all better for knowing him. I was asked many times about the time he passed away, well, what was his greatest opinion? I thought about it and concluded that he approached every case knowing that he would do his very best to understand the facts and apply the law to get the case decided correctly. He often worked 7 days a week. He was not going to quit until he was satisfied that he got it 100% correct. As such, every case he ever handled was his greatest opinion. Given the lengthy time he spent on the Supreme Court, there are literally hundreds of these fine opinions. My father once said that for most of us, it's a humbling thought that if we had not been born, the world could have gotten along quite nicely without us. He said it was the few, the very exceptional few, who accomplished so much during their lifetime that if they had not been born, the world would have been a poorer place without them. Justice Stephen Zinner was one of those precious few. Thank you. Justice Glenn Severson retired from the Supreme Court last June. This severs a career path between Justice Severson, Justice Zinner, and myself that started on our first day in law school in 1972. We all started school the same day. Several years ago, I was given a judicial gavel that had a claw head on it instead of the cylindrical head. The person who made it said he thought it was important for judges to build things. Justice Glenn Severson certainly was a judicial builder. As presiding judge of the Second Judicial Circuit, he oversaw the construction of the upper two floors on the Minnehaha County Courthouse. On the Supreme Court, he led our technology endeavors. He was instrumental in converting the UJS from a paper system to an electronic one. Justice Severson is a modest person and would be quick to point out that many dedicated people who were involved in these projects. That is undoubtedly true. But without Justice Severson's initiative and leadership, the projects would have never come to pass. Because of the quality of the opinions he authored for the Supreme Court, Justice Severson leaves a strong legacy of judicial scholarship. When Justice Severson retired, Governor Dugard appointed Circuit Judge Mark Salter to fill the vacancy. Justice Salter's experience and temperament render him superbly qualified to be the 51st South Dakotan to be a justice of the South Dakota Supreme Court. Justice Salter previously served in the JAG Corps of the United States Navy. This experience prepared him to later run the highly successful Veterans Court in Minnehaha County. Justice Salter also later practiced law in Sioux Falls and served at the U.S. Attorney's Office for South Dakota. His appellate talents were recognized there, where he was appointed chief of the appellate division. This provided him with a rich depth of appellate experience that is a great asset in his current position as a justice. He also taught advanced criminal procedure and appellate advocacy at the University of South Dakota School of Law. From 2012 to 2018, he served as a circuit judge in the Second Judicial Circuit. These career paths provide Justice Salter with an extensive background in criminal and civil law, the courts, and appellate procedure. He is an exceptional addition to the South Dakota Supreme Court. Please help me welcome Justice Salter. Most historians and most Americans rate Abraham Lincoln as our greatest president. Why? Against overwhelming odds, he held the United States together when it was tearing itself apart through a civil war. When historians are called upon to rate the least successful president, that unfortunate label usually falls upon Lincoln's predecessor, James Buchanan. He is strongly criticized for letting the Union dissolve and doing little to stop it. This is an interesting paradox, since both men faced the same problems at basically the same time. The difference? Lincoln took the problems head-on and solved them, while Buchanan did little. This historical lesson is compelling. A wise man once said, "Those who ignore the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them." I was privileged to become your Chief Justice in 2001. At that time, the Rural Attorney Program, the Drug and Alcohol Courts, Veterans Courts, Mental Health Courts, and updated proceedings, HOPE programs, and elder abuse laws did not exist. These programs were created to combat problems the citizens of South Dakota experienced. A lot of South Dakotans put in a lot of hard work to make them happen. While these programs are successful and certainly an improvement, I believe the best is yet to come. Well, to sum it all up, my fellow citizens of South Dakota, one can do no better than that philosopher, Dorothy, in The Wizard of Oz. Toto, there's no place like home. Thank you.
Please be seated. Madam Secretary.
Senator Langer moves that the joint session be dissolved.
All those in favor of the motion to dissolve will say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The joint session of the legislature is hereby dissolved. Thank you.
State House program funding provided by the South Dakota Bar Foundation, the educational and charitable arm of South Dakota lawyers and judges.